Well, the preliminaries are over, not lunch, the home and away season, albeit the Gold Coast has just got to dispense with Essendon. No offence to the Essendon supporters in the room, but that shouldn't be too difficult. We'll get it straight into it. And Jared, given that you're here and the topic of the week touches on two things that you're involved in. You're in list management now. You were at St Kilda. 8 years at 1.8 for 7 years, for 7 of those years for Tom de Koning. A 7-figure sum for the 8th year. Would Hawthorn have done
that? Probably not. Only because we've just signed our ruckman. So
that's the only reason.
Lloyd Meek has re-signed, and we've got quite a good backup ruckman in Ned Reeves. We'll be, and it's not a secret that we'll be trying to spend our money elsewhere. You look at what happened on Sunday night when you see Cam Rayner come out of the middle and kick goals to win the game for Brisbane. That's the type of player that we need and are probably going to go after in the next couple of trade periods.
You also played alongside, Kane, you'll obviously be very happy to see a long-term contract like that, but you played alongside Bud, who left for a similar type of contract. TDK isn't Bud, but the compensation that they got in free agency, Hawthorn was, pick 18 or 19. Carlton, as it stands now, will get pick 9 for the biggest contract that's available, that's going around. Is that backwards? Is that wrong?
It's the rules at the moment, so unfortunately that's the rules we have to play by. But when Bud got offered that deal back in 2013 now, everyone was saying, good luck him finishing out that contract, and he actually got one more year. And you would look back and you'd say it worked. 4 grand finals, if they pinched one, it definitely worked. I'd still say it worked. And any 25-year-old that gets offered $10 million in 10 years ago, would you take it? I definitely think so. So this is one where money's probably it's definitely played a factor in a decision being made to jump clubs.
Kane, your thoughts on the contract?
Well, I wouldn't do it for a ruckman. There's some types of players that I probably would do it for. I would have done it for Wanganeen Miller, but I just think it's so risky. I think that's one that worked, Buddy Franklin's deal, but there's a number that haven't, and that are hurting clubs right now. I think the Clayton Oliver one at Melbourne's really hurting them. There's no way they would do that deal again. You'd probably say the same about Christian Petrarca. There's others, many others. Lukosius at Port Adelaide. There's heaps that I could go through, but I think the AFL is certainly got it on their radar, as we've spoken about, to make it a mandatory length, a maximum length of 5 years, like other sports have done, and I think that would be pretty responsible. But then there'd be clubs out there that hope that doesn't happen, because there's some silly clubs out there that do silly things, and the smart clubs don't do silly things, and that's their advantage, the way they manage their salary cap and the way that they put together their list. So Geelong are probably sitting there going, I hope the AFL doesn't protect clubs from themselves, because we manage it pretty well, whereas others do crazy things.
Yeah, Cara, I thought St Kilda was a victim of their own inflation with what they did with TDK, and then creating the extra market for Wanganeen Miller in the amount that they had to pay him. But you felt on the podcast this week that it was a coup for Saints?
Well, we had an argument about it. You didn't think it was a coup.
No.
You thought it was, you thought it was just
averting disaster.
A great relief for St Kilda. I think it's great for Tom de Koning that he hasn't come in on that money as the highest paid player at the club. I'm really glad for him that Nazaya Wanganeen Malira, who's an infinitely better and more influential player, is going to be the man and not TDK. I just think, Michael, that St Kilda is a club that, players just leave. I mean, this time last year they lost Josh Battle, who's just been named in the All-Australian squad for Hawthorn. He didn't go for big money. He left because he didn't want to be at St Kilda. And Hawthorn sold him a vision. Jared was probably one of the people who helped. Were you there by then? Yeah, you were. Yeah. And Sam, obviously, and Sam's wife, and all the recruiters you've got at the footy club. But I thought it was a coup, because St Kilda don't keep players, and it was a week before the end of the season, and the Adelaide Football Club in a premiership window had offered him big money. Port Adelaide, where he's got a lot of friends, had offered him big money. The call of home. And given everything St Kilda have done this year, as one other president said, trying to whinge their way to the top, complaining about all the advantages everyone else, how unfair it is on them. If they'd lost him, yep, it would have been a disaster. But I also think in the end he stayed because of Ross Lyon. So I think that was a great result for them. I do think it was a coup.
Yeah, we'll disagree on that. The other topic of the week has been Isaac Rankin. Firstly, what each of your thoughts, 5-4-3, what the right number was, and more specifically, what does it do for Adelaide through the finals that he isn't there?
Well, on-field's easy to speak about because he's the one that can change the game for them, forward or through the midfield, and he's the one they've sort of looked to when they've been under pressure and they've needed a spark around the ball. He's a tackle breaker. He's hard to tackle. He can break lines and he can kick big goals, as probably Jared saw when Adelaide played Hawthorn a few Friday nights ago. He was really the difference on field for them, and he's something that they don't have. So, can they win it without him? Probably. Is it going to make it a lot harder? Yep, there's no doubt about that. And it was one of the dumbest things I've seen a player do for a long period of time. When this club is being so starved of success, haven't won a premiership this century and haven't played finals for 6 years and have done everything right on and off the field to get themselves in a position to qualify top and have 2 home finals. So, incredibly stupid, and he would be realising that. Some days ago, the AFL should have taken 24 hours to make that 5 weeks. I'm not sure why they allowed the lawyers to get in. And then equally, I'm not sure why Adelaide allowed him to jump on a plane and escape the problems. I think he should have fronted up and faced his teammates, faced the AFLW players and reported to training like any other given week and not run away from the situation.
That's the most disappointing, isn't it? We spoke about it on the agenda setters last night. Once I found out that the club had wanted him to speak to particularly his AFLW colleagues, some of whom were really hurting. I mean, to see Chelsea Randall, one of their star women players and former captain, have to get up and front up on the social media website of the club and talk about it, and Isaac Rankin refused to, said he couldn't deal with it, I thought was really poor. And obviously not to front his teammates, I thought was really poor. And you've seen some comments by some of those teammates in the last 24 hours on social media, just saying, well, we didn't even know he was going to Rome. I mean, what a terrible look for the footy club. And then Matthew Nicks has to go on a show and justify him going and talk about this elite training program. I mean, what a load of crap, seriously. As if you need to go to Italy to do an elite training program. I think it's, as Kane said, they've had such a great year. And one stupid, thoughtless and incredibly hurtful for a lot of people comment just undoes so much goodwill.
Jared, I'll go to you. Collingwood last year plunged on Dan Houston, traded away future picks, all in the belief they're in the window. If they don't get it this year, was that, and particularly the way Houston's played, is that an error? Is it a bust?
I don't think it's an error yet. They've made finals and made top 4, so you would say it's a win thus far. But only time will tell in the next 5 to 6 years. Teams trading away future firsts is obviously something that you need board approval and you need to consider a lot as a list management team, as your strategy, because you can see with teams trading away their future first that it can have an effect. You look at Essendon with what they did with trading away future first for Dylan Shield. Now he's finishing up. The ones that have worked, someone like Jeremy Cameron, where GWS match and the Geelong have to push 3 first rounders to the Giants. One's the very, very special players is where you consider it. But in saying that, teams aren't going to let go of their very, very special players.
Yeah, I think that the future trading 2 years in advance has got a real risk for it.
This is where Kane's
really
teams
clubs
protecting themselves.
So the good teams are hoping that it comes in, because the stupid clubs, the desperate clubs, and to be fair, some clubs have some disadvantages over others. Very easy for Collingwood to attract players because you get to play at the MCG 14 times a year in front of 80,000. Same when Richmond were flying, but a bit harder if you're other clubs. So you may need those measures, but it's going to open it up for some clubs to do some silly things. Port Adelaide traded their future first round pick for Jack Lukosius. You finish in the bottom 6 and you've given away a pick 6 when you desperately need your draft picks. That's what happens when you're a desperate club.
Speaking of Port, I was there for Bokey's last game on Friday night. was a brilliant win. They finally showed Ken some respect that he probably didn't get most of the year.
Yeah.
Did you think that whole season was hijacked from the moment they started the succession plan?
Well, yeah, that was an error, and that they were steadfast that it wasn't. But once you decide that that's not the coach you want anymore, there's no point keeping him in the job. So that's essentially, they sacked the coach but asked him to stay there for a season, and it didn't work. It was confusing. The players didn't really know who was coaching what, and I think the staff around the place were trying to sort of butter up to Josh Carr because they knew that he was going to be the decision maker going forward, and Ken was a bit on the outer. So yeah, it was a difficult year. It was a wasted year.
What does Trevor Spoke think, Michael? You know a bit about him, don't you?
I do. I ghostwrote his book, which is coming out later this month. I think that his first reaction, like a lot of the players, was, what does this mean for me? As soon as it's announced, and he had no line of sight on it, he said. And they thought, like, part of the reason of coming back and going hard this year was winning a flag. And then you say, well, if you've thrown that idea out the window, is it all about the succession plan? Who am I taking instructions from? Is it Josh or is it Ken? And that filtered through to every single player thinks, what does it mean for me? And what does the next coach think of me? And I think they took some time. My sense, not directly from him, but my sense was that they took time to really get clarity on what does it mean for this year. And Ken was the one that was pushing it, trying to keep the place together more than anyone in prosecuting that plan. But clearly it wasn't Ken's choice. He didn't go in there and say, I want to do this. And I haven't seen any succession plan work where it hasn't been the idea of the senior coach fostering the younger person in underneath them, Paul Roos style. Every other situation at Hawthorn where it's foisted upon Collingwood, where it's foisted upon the senior coach, it just hasn't worked. But Jared, you had no coaching changeovers at Hawthorn, and then you went to St Kilda and it became the norm. What was it like within observing a different club and observing a locker room when there is that constant change of coach?
Well, you weren't part of the playing group for one, so I can't answer in that sense. But what you learn is stability is so important at a football club, whether it be president, CEO. I remember Joel Selwood, when he retired, said he was so lucky that he had 2 CEOs, 2 GMs, 1 president and 2 coaches. Now, for someone who gets 16 years in footy, you look at James Frawley, who came across to us from Melbourne, and Clarko was his 8th coach in 8 years. So as a player, how do you feel like you can develop, or how do you know what to do when you've got a different voice every year out the front telling you what to do? So for mine, going from one, you learn that stability is so important, and you learn that obviously time is another thing. Some clubs that are down the bottom don't actually give time to people to think, are they going to be able to do their job or whatnot? So for mine, understanding that is so important. So when you go back now and you for my role, when you're saying to players or trying to attract players, hey, we're very stable. We've got a very, very good coach. We've got a CEO and a GM and a president who are all aligned. There's no egos. We're all working towards a common goal. Selling that vision is obviously great because some of these players are dealing with coaching changes year upon year.
Segues perfectly to Melbourne.
I was just thinking
the complete
about them
opposite
as I
of
was
exactly
listening
all of that. Cara, we've spoken about it. What credentialed coach that had opportunities elsewhere would go and coach Melbourne right now when you haven't got any of those things in place? You've got 3 different venues that you train and play from. You've got uncertainty over the president. You've got a CEO that hasn't yet started. An uncertainty over the footy head, probably going to change, and that the footy head that they've got at the moment is on the coaching selection panel. It just doesn't seem the place that you would walk into and say, I'll get success here.
Well, I defer to Lee Matthews, who's one of the most sensible, pragmatic footy people I've ever met. And he's not intimately involved with the workings of Melbourne, as you and I have been, Glees, writing about them. But he just said the other day, if I was Nathan Buckley, I wouldn't go anywhere near Melbourne because they don't. You need a club like that needs a footy CEO. They've appointed someone who has no experience in football, and unless you're really desperate to coach, I wouldn't do it. Now, I can't tell you what Nathan Buckley's thinking. I think he's their first choice, but we haven't had it confirmed that he's actually going for the job yet, and I find that really interesting. So they're a mess. I mean, they sacked Mark Williams last week, and then the CEO, who's not there yet, says, but we're trying to find a job for him. He's a great person. And we've got past connections. I mean, they're running around like a headless chook, Melbourne, at the moment, and the poor captain, Max Gawn, who he's clearly all Australian squad, isn't he, Kane?
Yeah.
Yep, I haven't, sorry, of course. And I'm sure we'll be
Number
in all
8,
this, and I'm sure we'll be
if he makes it.
sure he'll be in the team. But he said the other day, well, you know, for the past 3 weeks we've had no coach, and hopefully they bring in some new people who, you know, change things up a bit. I mean, it's a disaster, and so many big decisions to make, and no one running the show to make them, or even do the review to make the decisions after that.
We will open questions to the floor, so if you've got questions, prepare them. Tasmania's coming in, which will create a list challenge for everyone, and particularly you, Jared. How long do you think, based on the rules that we're all seeing of what the build will be, before the Devils become a serious competitor and can win a flag, or at least be top 4? Because anything can happen.
I think the AFL is giving them every chance to be successful straight away, whether that be the sign-on fees that the players get, the fact that they're getting all these picks that they can trade away to get established players in. I don't think we'll see Tasmania struggle as much as what Giants and Suns did in their first early years. So I think, you know, it's up to them to try and build it from the ground up and hope that they do it well. You'd like to think that they're picking the brain on these 2 previous expansion clubs and seeing what they did well and what they didn't do well. But until, you know, we still haven't got the rules and we still don't know when they're actually going to be in the AFL. But, you know, when considering we were able to trade picks with that draft as of this year, and knowing that, you know, if you trade that out, you might be trading out, you know, pick 6 as what Port have done. So, you know, it's a little bit strategic, but you've got to, I suppose, work on the fly as well.
Is that also the reason we're seeing so many of these longer contracts? Worrell also signed a longer one announced this week to take them past that Tassie period.
Yeah, well, so, I mean, strategically, you look at our one recently with Watson. Like, we've taken him past, it's 3 years, but we've taken him past the Tasmanian licence when they come in and when they've got the 2 years of being able to talk to players. But in saying that, a lot, you know, Tassie probably, I think on their list they had 120 that they're talking to already, you know, or that they've, you know, reached out to. For us, Will Day's probably one that they look at and think, can we have a big swing at him? So yeah, I think clubs, and strategically, they're good players. They're trying to push them past the Tasmanian inclusion.
Will the Hawks be having conversations with Melbourne about Petrarca this off-season?
Will they? Not sure. Do your due diligence, Glees, and see what happens. What do you think?
I think they've already spoken to him, yeah.
You think they have?
I do.
Wow. There you go.
Can I
learn something new every day.
You can ask any.
Oscar Allen, where would he have fitted?
Where would he have fit
Yeah.
in? Well, at the time when we spoke, or when the coach spoke to him, we were looking at a key forward. We didn't know how Mitch Lewis was going to come back.
You've got
we also didn't know. Yeah, well, that's 4. But at the time when you do it, Gunston had only kicked nothing, and Mitch Lewis was coming back off a knee. So, you know, you've got to be in it until you're not in it. But now with the 4 tools, well, we don't need a key forward and we move on.
Has Brisbane got you off the hook there? Because you can commit to players a long way out and then you feel compelled to follow through on it.
Well, I think you're doing your homework from the start, Glees. As I said before, you're in it until you're not. So you may as well be in it early and do all your homework and get an understanding of who the player you're bringing in is. But as you said, I think Brisbane were always ahead.
We'll throw it open to the floor, but firstly we will, and we can assume your grand final tip. Grand final teams as opposed to Premier, Brownlow and Rising Star.
So who's playing in the grand final?
Yep.
Probably Brisbane and Geelong. I know they're playing, so it makes it a bit of a weird way round. But if I was just picking the 2 best teams, I think they're the 2 best teams in it. What Brisbane did on Sunday night was pretty compelling with the players that they've got out. Lockie Neilberry to come back, a couple of others. So they're pretty frightening, and Geelong have just sort of flown under the radar a little bit. I think Nasai is going to poll really well in the Brownlow. If they'd won 3 or 4 more games, I think he probably would have won it, but it's probably going to be a stretch. But he'll storm home. And the other one was
Rising Star.
I won't comment just because I got a vote on it. So
Okay. Before we move on from that though, not that Rising Star, but is Geelong's soft run into the finals, playing no team inside the 8 in that last 6 or 8 weeks, is that damaging to their finals campaign?
I think write them off at your own peril. Really.
Yeah.
Everyone said that a couple of years ago when Sydney were the number 1 team and Geelong just, you know, they prepped themselves for grand final day and they come out and played arguably their best game of footy in the last 4 or 5 years. So if you want to write off Geelong, be my guest.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying, is it the ideal preparation? Yeah.
I think they would have trained hard enough.
Yeah. Who will Hawthorn be playing on grand final day?
Brisbane or Geelong?
Good answer. Brownlow, Rising Star?
Rising Star, probably Murphy Reid. I don't think he's done something that only Cyril did, but Cyril didn't win it back in 2008. So he's gone past Cyril, so that maybe in terms of goals and goal assists, I think it's quite impressive. Brownlow, probably Dawson. I think just with the fact that Adelaide have won so many games and he's played majority of them and played well, you give them a chance.
No, I think Nick Dacos is going to win the Brownlow. And I think that Brisbane and Adelaide are going to play in the grand final. I think Adelaide win against Collingwood. They then get a home prelim. And I just reckon they're slightly ahead of Geelong. And I'm Levi Ashcroft, as Kane knows. But I just can't remember a more consistent...
You're fiercely Levi Ashcroft.
Well... I'm still upset for Will Ashcroft, to be honest. I know he ended up with a Norm Smith medal, which is probably better.
I'll take that one.
Which is definitely better.
And the other one.
I know that, but I still think that Will Ashcroft didn't win the Rising Star because he got injured. I thought he was by far the best player in an infinitely better team than Harry Sheezel, as good as he was that year. And Levi hasn't had a poor game, and he's pretty much played all season, and he's just got better and better. So
yeah, I fear there might be an Adelaide double with Dawson and Curtin. I think Curtin's had a great year too. So we'll ask anyone from the floor. Would it be? Yeah.
After the introduction of Tasmania as the 19th team, how long before the 20th team gets introduced, and which market will it land in?
I don't see that happening for a long time, and I don't think it's going to be Darwin, despite the best efforts of the good folk up in the Northern Territory and that committee they've got going, led by Andrew Demetriou. I would hope, and if I had to pick a place now, I'd say Perth, but I don't think that it's going to happen for a long time.
Caro, Tassie, the AFL's gone, in my view, a little bit quiet after the election down there, just in terms of what may occur if there's no roof, if there is a roof, what may happen politically down there. What are you hearing about how the Commission and the club presidents are viewing the situation in light of the election down there, and do you see the team going on the path that the Commission's set so far?
Kane, this is your worst nightmare. Kane says Tasmania is the most boring topic we cover, and I think it's the most interesting. So I think that everything's back on track now, that the opposition leader, the Labor leader, has basically admitted he made a complete dill of himself and wasted everyone's time and money for a few months. I really believe that. And so I think the AFL are feeling a lot more buoyant this week than they were 2 weeks ago. I think that as the year progresses, I think the AFL will announce extra funding. Maybe it's going to be for the TNA, for the training and admin facility for the club. And I think that Anthony Albanese is going to announce some more money too, not actual funding for the stadium, but in other areas of the new club. So I'm very confident, and the Commission is moving full steam ahead now for a 2028 start. I'm really confident it's going to happen, and I think everyone's very relieved the political situation has died down a bit. Positive enough for you, Kane?
Are they sitting on a few decisions in anticipation that they don't want to make it look like they're already completely in? If they have to backpedal, they've still got that threat of build the stadium or we're out.
Oh, look, I think David Barham, the Essendon president, who basically took on the AFL at one of the last Commission presidents' meeting and said, we're going to look like corporate bullies of the worst kind if this falls over now because of a roof or no roof. I think that's starting to gain a bit of momentum, even though the AFL won't admit it. But I reckon they'll get the roof, and I reckon they'll get the stadium. I think it's going to be one of the great stories. I mean, I reckon I've been campaigning for this since the 90s. So I'm pretty happy about it. Before we move on, can I just ask you about Jack Gunston, who you mentioned in passing? and who has made the All-Australian squad. Unbelievable story. It looked to us like a bit of a charity case when Hawthorn recruited him from Brisbane. We got that completely wrong. Can you explain what's happened with Jack Gunston and why you think he's done what he's done this year?
I would also say that he thinks he got it wrong too. Like if you look at the fact that he left and went to Brisbane and was probably an injury away from playing in that grand final side in 23 and the loss to Collingwood. If they picked him and made him sub, Brisbane may have won, I feel. But for him to swallow his pride and say, listen, I made a wrong decision, would you mind taking me back? Shows that he's actually grown up. And not saying that he wasn't a spoiled little brat or anything like that.
But he was grieving the loss of his father.
Yeah. Like to go through certain things in life, it gives you perspective, as you know, Caro. So for him to come back and understand that he wasn't, a young kid anymore, and his job was to basically pass on wisdom to these young kids, and to see what he did with Kelsha last year, and then probably get some reward for effort for his training program in the off-season. I mean, to kick 62 goals at 33, 34 years of age, it's quite impressive. So hopefully he makes the team. We'll find out in a couple of nights, and hopefully he has a good final series as well.
And Kane, when did you start talking about, now that we know he's in the squad, when did the All-Australian committee start talking about him seriously?
Yeah, so it's the challenging thing with the All-Australian team is remembering what happened in round 4 and 5. So that's the reason that we meet at about round 11, round 12, and put up on the whiteboard at this stage of the year who's a lock, and there's probably 7 or 8 of those, and then you've got all those names to the right and to the left that are in the mix that you revisit when you meet at the end of the year. And clubs also nominate their players as well, who they really recommend and want to fight hard for. So he probably wasn't in that conversation halfway through the year, but there's some players that eventually just force their way in and make you pick them. And as I said, I've seen the Hawks live probably most of the teams this year, and what he did against Melbourne when he kicked 7 was one of the best individual performances I've seen this year. So him and Jamie Elliott, probably fighting for that spot in the forward line. They play a similar role, so we'll see where that lands.
Sorry, but very quickly, it's a cabinet solidarity, but it's a squad of 44. If there were 45, who would you have added?
That's a question I'd have to go look. What's hard is, because I speak so much on the radio, I almost become the face of all the questions for the All-Australians. I was like, there's 9 people or 10 people on this committee, and somehow I cop all the bullets for it because I got to front up tomorrow on radio on the next day, and everyone almost thinks it's like my team, but it's not at all. I'm just a very small part to play. So you'd have to ask the other 8 or 9 that question. Good answer.
As a Hawthorn supporter, can I just put another vote in for Jack Gunston? My question, though, for the panel is Snoop Dogg for the grand final, yes or no?
I got told it was going to be Foo Fighters, so I was looking forward to that. I won't be taking the kids if Snoop's on early, but doesn't worry me. It's entertainment. We go for entertainment.
Are you serious? You won't take...
No, I'm joking, but I probably won't take the kids. No, the 7-year-old's not going to
not because of Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, correct.
Oh, look, now that I've read up a bit more on the old Snoop...
The old Snoop.
I think it was a poor decision, and I don't care. I know he reinvented himself at the Olympics and the Super Bowl and the stuff he did with Martha Stewart, and we're a very different place to America, and we're a very different beast, the MCC members and just the grand final crowd, I reckon, to the Paris Olympics as well. And I just find it amazing, Michael, that the AFL have done this deal with the Family Court of Australia, where we're going to be running anti-domestic violence ads at every final, as the NRL have been doing at State of Origin, and AFL players have become involved. Scott Pendlebury's one of them. Alex Pearce is another one. That we're running anti-domestic violence ads and condoning this bloke who has a very, very poor history with women. So I think it was a poor choice.
Wholeheartedly agree. And if the ridiculousness of it needed to be reinforced, it was by the fact that they then suspended one of their own players, the sort of entertainer that people wanted to go and see for on grand final day, and for legitimate reasons. But these aren't historic. Like this idea that this is all just these back catalogue. There's interviews from within the last decade where he's talking really poorly. He had
a crack at gay marriage last Friday.
Yeah, he was a pimp. He was, and he spoke that how it takes skill to do that, and craft. The comparison with the Olympics. Firstly, the Olympics has true parity between the sexes when they're competing. There is no secondary competition that's lesser. These are also not organisations that are banning people, as the AFL is, for what is said in the field of play. And if you're going to take that ground, you can't then go and hire this bloke. And yes, there's you can find lyrics of Robbie Williams, and this was something someone from the AFL did say, well, we had Kiss, we had Robbie Williams, they haven't got some great stuff. It's like, what? So you reckon this guy's bad? Look at all the idiots we had before him. Like, no. The line in some lyrics is one thing, but it was his dominant narrative for his entire career. And
bring back Barry Crocker, I say. Judith Durham.
Yes. Willie.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. So I'm a Carlton supporter, so apologies to all the non-Carlton supporters in the room, but this question has 30 years of pain in it. Happy for anyone to take it. If you're Graham Wright, what would be the one thing, you can do anything, you can do absolutely anything, what would be the one thing you would do to help Carlton improve on field? And second part of the question is, what is the realistic time frame for Carlton to win a flag? Are we in a full rebuild now and it's 2030, or is it next year?
The one thing they can do is go and take Zach Butters from Port. That'd be the best thing they could do, other than the time frame.
Yeah, well, he would help. Good to see you again. If you're Michael Voss, it needs to be next year, because he's going to start the year as the coach under the most pressure. So every move that he wants to make is about them being better next year. Is that the best thing for the footy club though? Like, is the best thing to be a bit more patient and have a mini reset and maybe trade out a Harry Mackay or a Sam Walsh and go back to the draft and invest there? So I'd love to know from them where they see themselves. So they see themselves playing in prelim finals next year or not. And that would be a list management and strategic plan from them. So really hard to answer unless you know what they're thinking. I don't think they're in it to win it next year. I don't think they're going to be good enough. There's too many holes in their list to do that. Seems like they've got some salary cap issues, albeit De Koning leaving and Silvani leaving will help. That's probably a win-win for them. But yeah, I don't think they're in the mix next year, more like 3-4 years away.
And they're obviously making wholesale changes to their off-field footy department. 3 assistant coaches today, I think. Yeah, moved on 3 assistant coaches. They're obviously looking for a new head of football, which is such an important role at a footy club. And we hear that maybe Danny Daly from Brisbane might be in the mix for that job and highly respected. Not sure. Danny Daly also might be interested in a coaching job, so I'm not sure about that. But yeah, they never recovered from round 1, did they? I mean, there was something weird happened in that game, and it just they were mentally shot after that, I reckon, as a club.
So were their supporters.
Again.
What was the first thing you'd do, Jared, if you were there?
No, well, I'm happy if they keep trading us their first and second pick, which we've got this year, so they can keep doing what they're doing. That's fine.
Thanks, Kane. Now, I might be able to help you out with that player that you was unlucky to miss out on the All-Australian. It was, of course, Tim Taranto, wasn't it, that you were... just on the Isaac Rankin punishment, I mean, it was AFL's copped it, and it's widely seen as a fairly sort of manufactured result. Do you think there's any sort of to perhaps give him a chance to play in the grand final? But do you think there is any merit, though, more broadly speaking, when it comes to tribunal rulings, to acknowledge that the punishment of missing out on a final or a grand final is more severe than a home and away game?
I don't think so. Do you,
don't?
Kane?
Well, it is a bigger penalty. The missing round 8 to 10 versus missing an elimination in a prelim final.
So by extension, you think, well, I could probably, if I'm going to sledge someone in a horrible way, best do it in round 23.
I don't think they're thinking that way, but the same could be said for just an on-field incident like a high bump. Like say Houston last year gets 5 for knocking out Isaac Rankin in the home and away season, misses 5. Should that have been 3, considering they went on to play 3 finals? So it does open up the door for other cases to be able to argue that if it's found that, you know, the AFL reduced the penalty on the basis of that.
Well, history is littered with players who played in grand finals who in home and away would not have played. I mean, Barry Hall is a classic example. Some people think Trent Cotchin was lucky after the Dylan Shield in the preliminary final. I mean, the list goes on. The Swans, was it Dunkley who the Swans went to court about in the 90s? So, you know, there are different rules, but I think in this case, I don't think a homophobic or definitely not a racial slur should be included in lighter penalties.
Not necessarily lighter penalties, but if you asked any player if they'd rather miss 3 rounds of the regular season or 1 final.
Yeah, well, of course. But
doesn't that create the exact equation? Like, they are worth more. They are missing that final is more damaging. It is a greater punishment to that player, I think, than missing a couple of games in the home and away season. So I think that there is merit in weighting them. The AFL weights grand final day an offence committed on grand final day with heavier penalties because you've ruined the spectacle of grand final day without bringing Snoop Dogg on.
Thanks. There was some great vision on Sunday night at the Hawks-Brisbane game of Luke Bruce mentoring Nick Watson and some of the other younger players before he was subbed on. Now that he's announced his retirement, is the club looking at perhaps offering him an assistant coaching role, particularly given that perhaps Adrian Hick might be poached by another club?
I'm not sure. Yeah, potentially. I think, you know, he's indicated that he'd like to stay in football, whether that be coaching or administration. So I think it would be remiss of him not to, you know, explore those options, and probably the other advice is maybe look elsewhere as well. You know, all he's known is Hawthorn since he was 18 years old. From my experience, going from somewhere else and experiencing a different club and a different network of people, it can be good. So I wouldn't be surprised if Punk does stay in football, whether it be at Hawthorn or another club.
If academies are all about game development and access to draft picks is just a reward for that generosity of development, should all clubs have access or create academies around Australia?
Well, the whole point of the academies in Queensland and New South Wales is because they're not traditional footy states. So that's why they're trying to bring in players who would in other times have played soccer or NRL. I think that makes it really difficult. I think you're going back, personally, I think you're going back to the days of zones, but I'm probably the wrong person to be asking. Are you happy they're going to make it more difficult from next year?
Yeah, I am. But also too, like you throw up the scenario that we've got next year with Cooper Hodge, whose son, you know, dad played 350 games at nearly Hawthorn. So the fact that he's able to pick Brisbane and Hawthorn doesn't feel right as a footy supporter, but they're the rules. You know, this is going to be one of our first father-sons coming through, and, you know, part of our job now is to look at what there is, and there's, you know, for us there's going to be, I think, 64 available over the next 18 years of Hawks father-sons that can come through. So we've got to do that well to try and get them in. And that, you know, that you laugh, but it's like 4 Crawfords, 4 Hodges, 4 Lewises. There's 12 off the bat. You'd like to hope you get one.
A couple of roughheads too, aren't there?
Yeah, but one's not even one yet. So if we're holding out hope for...
But I think there's 2 different issues there. There's the Northern Academies, which I think are completely legitimate, because you've got a guy like Leo Lombard arrived in the draft. He was taken at the top end of the draft, but he wouldn't have played AFL if there wasn't an academy up there. He would have been lost to the sport. So it's not a draft pick lost to the pool of talent. It's one added that then they've used their pick on. So I think that's different. The next generation academies are farcical. There's players, the clubs turn up. Sure, it's not Hawthorn, but the clubs turn up to the Coates League and say, right, anyone's parent born overseas. They haven't spent the years. If you go and find a kid playing basketball who's 7 foot tall and he's 14 years old, and you grab him from the streets of Dandenong and say, come down to us, and you foster him for 5 years, yes, you should get access to that kid, but that's not what they do. They turn up to the existing pathway.
Haven't they changed the rules now? I thought you couldn't really do that anymore.
They're trying to extend it to 3 years that you've got to have an involvement with the kid, but that is still turning up to the under-16s in the Coates League where they've already been in the pathway. It's ridiculous. And what will make it slightly better, the system this year, is they've changed. It's a convoluted and boring topic, but the points that are attached to a pick are changing. So you will pay a stronger price for the player you get. You won't have Nick Dacos going for 3 picks in the 40s or whatever. So it will be a more market price, but the next generation academies, I think, they're going to struggle to survive anyway. I think the AFL is going to move on them.
Jared, how do you feel about then player managers who turn up to the under-16s, chat to a couple of kids, maybe cop a $5,000 fine every year, but, big deal because they've managed to snare 2 or 3 of the best 16-year-olds in the land. Is that frustrating for a footy club, or is it not a problem?
Not for the top enders are going to get picked no matter what. But I suppose it's how many of the managers want to sign, because you're promising maybe something you can't deliver, which is helping them get drafted. If these managers go up and sign 15 or 20 kids, and then throughout the next 2 years that their development falls off, or you've kind of sold this kid their dream of being able to play AFL footy, and it's gone. So, they're doing their jobs, and managers, as we know, play an important part in footy. It's a lot different to now compared to when I was drafted and whatnot. There was letters and faxes sent, whereas now people can just touch base and knock on your door and have interviews. So it's interesting, but it's part of the game.
Jared, without saying because he's a contracted player, why wouldn't you be going after Christian Petrarca?
Because we may be into others. Is that a good answer?
No,
if you
that's
follow
an
up with
obvious
who?
answer. You may be into others, but
Yes.
What would stop you from going after someone like him when he's obviously disgruntled with the club?
If it's the right fit for our football club, knowing that you're bringing in someone who is 30 years old, are we trying to win now? Are we trying to win for a long time? What effect does it have on our salary cap? What assets are we going to have to give up to get him? So many different scenarios and factors go into it to think, is he the right person that we should chase right now?
As it stands, is he the right person that you should chase right now?
Well, as of tomorrow, we've got 7 weeks until the trade period ends. So things are going to move fast and it's going to happen pretty quickly. Is he the right? I don't know. I can't tell you. We'll see in 7 weeks, eh?
I won't put you on the spot.
Well
with this
done for
question.
persistence, though.
Yeah. But Kane, if you stepped into Melbourne and took over as coach, I know you'd love that. You've got 2 players. You've had Petrarca and Oliver both wanting out and looking to get out. Would they be the first conversations, and would you just go to the board? Those 2 need to go. If they don't want to be here, I don't want them here. We trade and we scorched earth.
Well, I think it sounds easy, but it's difficult because, as I said, these are these long-term deals that kill you. Like if Clayton Oliver was out of contract, you'd move him on. I would move him on tomorrow. Like, I just think it's been nothing but a distraction, and I think that type of player isn't as valuable as they once were. High accumulating midfielders that don't really inflict any damage aren't what they used to be. But the problem is he's got 4 or 5 years left at $1 million, and some other club has to take that risk and take the salary, and then you have to work out what you're going to get for him. So it's not an easy question to answer, and unfortunately those mistakes come back to hurt you. Petrarca, I'm more likely to persist with. Really culturally, he's pretty solid. I know there's been some issues recently, but I think all in all, he's a pretty good person. He's a hard trainer, he's a hard worker, and he prepares pretty well, and he's at his best a pretty damaging footballer. So I'd keep him, but Oliver, Fritsch, May would be the ones that I'd be having a conversation about.
Any more questions from the floor? All right. Well, yes, there's one down. Caro.
No, well, I mean, I'm a fan, but I think I would like to think that they're back in the 8. 3 years would be my sort of conservative thoughts. What about you? You're the expert. You, Jared.
Who knows with that? But I like what they were able to do last year, like getting rid of and being able to bring in 6 top end players, as well as getting the number. What is it? It works out to be the number 3 pick this year in the draft. Like, it's, you bring in talent at the right time, and having these kids grow together is something that I've experienced. And so to watch a club do that now after the success that they had, I think now you'll see the next generation of Tigers, and they could be. I know we're just guessing, but they could be 3 or 5 years off playing finals again. Who knows?
I think you guys have changed the time frame that everyone expects of teams to jump to Hawthorn, the way they went last year and then this. So,
I'm a bit mystified as a long-standing Collingwood supporter. What happened after they quote unquote qualified? That a team that appeared to have a great deal of system and self-belief, and then to win only 2 games out of the next 7. What went wrong? What happened? Was it a psychological thing, or was it something else?
Age caught up with them.
Yeah, probably physically for me. Yeah, just injuries, age. It's a long season. When you got a number of players that have played a lot of footy that are 31, 32, 33, up to 36. They're long campaigns, and it feels like they're just suffering from fatigue and injury. That's what it looked like. As simple as that to me. Yeah.
But and yet they're still in the top 4 after only just.
Gold Coast helped them out.
They did, but top 4 is top 4 in a year when 14 wins didn't guarantee you a spot in the finals. So, they didn't make the finals last year. I've got some concern. I'm not sure everything's not as happy at Collingwood as some people would make out. We'll see how that what evolves over the off season. But I think Pendlebury can't keep. Surely he can't keep playing like this. Who knows? Maybe Jordan De Goey is going to have a really good final series and do the job that he hasn't been able to do all year. So
I think a couple of their injuries were in really critical areas. So they lose Howe, who's really important for a side that's got only one key back, and he was really badly out of form. He's their captain. They lose Billy Frampton, premiership forward. And their forward line's iffy. They've got McStay, Membry. Myercheck's banged up. He gets this time of the year every year, and he's banged up because he plays that combative style. Membry's a third tall that likes to get into space. Elliott also likes to get in space. They've been playing games where they've been more territory, so they've been playing, and those guys can't find space in territory. You see that in the Adelaide game, again against Melbourne. They're better moving the ball quickly and finding those guys quickly up the field. But they also, I raised it earlier, I don't think things are terribly happy there in some areas. I think, they plunge on a couple of half-back flankers with $900,000 contracts, trade away their future picks for Dan Houston, who doesn't play on anyone, can't kick on his left-hand side, and he's slow. So I didn't see how that was going to make the difference. Yes, they've been top 4, but he isn't the reason that they're top 4. And in the meantime, they've traded away their future. So I don't think things are that rosy.
All positive.
Maybe last.
Last question.
This season we saw a big divide between the top 9 sides and the bottom 9. What do you put that down to?
Well, I know it's a biggest issue confronting the Commission and the AFL headquarters at the moment, how to lift the perennials from the bottom up to the top. That doesn't explain. I mean, it's been a long time, you're right, since we've seen such a stark contrast. I think bottom 9 managed to beat the top 9. Someone told me yesterday once, if you go through all the results. It's been quite extraordinary. Anyway, it's a bit difficult to work out where Sydney fits in there because, I think they just had a really poor start to the season. That's one club who you would say ended the year pretty well and suffered from injuries. And that's why they're going to change the rules with the academies and the father-sons, because they don't want a tainted draft over the next few years. So the first round of the draft, I think, from next year will be father-son academy free. Jared, I'm not sure what you've heard, but I think that's what they're looking at. But, teams like North Melbourne, it's pretty disastrous, really, that they haven't been able to get out of the bottom 4. Richmond not so much because, they won a flag not so long ago. West Coast, just really poor list management, poor administratively, and just, I don't know what's gone wrong there, but surely they'll get better. St Kilda just continue to fail, and I don't really know why. Maybe Ross Lyon can finally lift them out of the bottom echelons of the ladder. But I think it's been unusual this year, don't you, Glees?
Yeah, it has. I mean, you've got clubs that should have been better that have slid. Like Carlton shouldn't have been as this bad. Melbourne shouldn't have been this bad. St Kilda's always this bad.
Port Adelaide.
North Melbourne's climbed up the ladder this year from second bottom to third bottom, which is they're on the rise.
But then there's
5
proof.
years at bottom 2.
But then there's proof Adelaide can do it. Like they've done it
Yes.
without father-sons, without academies.
Yep.
They've been able to list manage well, trade well, sign players at the right time. So there is hope for those
As
teams
Richmond
as well.
did when they won their 3 flags. They didn't have any
Last question with you two
father-sons.
Channel 7 people here. Do you want to see Thursday night footy every week for the year next year and have Carlton and Essendon on it every week for the year next year?
Yes to the first one, no to the second one. Okay?
Yeah, they've got to get. Not easy to do because you would have thought Sydney are a pretty good chance to be good again this year. You would have thought that Port Adelaide played in a prelim, they weren't going to be this bad. So hard to put together the fixture, and you wouldn't have been able to predict what's happened to Essendon with their injuries, but they have to get that right. They have to, because the Thursday night fixturing's been a complete disaster. We hadn't had a good. I think there's been since round 11. That was the last good Thursday night game. That was Bulldogs and Geelong down in Geelong, the Bailey Smith game. Since then, pretty average. But we got a good one coming up next Thursday. Adelaide and Collingwood couldn't be any better. I think Adelaide will win at home. Yeah.
Gross.
Yep.
Pies will win. Thank you.